An 82-year-old lonely millionaire man passes away and leaves will. His two children return only to fight over his inheritance. Who he chose will leave you speechless. Mr. Arthur Jameson was once a name that resounded in the financial circles of the city. Now, at 82 years old, he was no longer the commanding figure who once owned one of the most successful real estate development firms in the state. He lived alone in a sprawling mansion, one that was both luxurious and profoundly lonely. From the outside, the house looked timeless, standing proudly as a symbol of Mr. Jameson's lifelong achievements. But within its walls, the place had a hollow stillness, with only the soft creaks of age-old wood and the distant ticking of grand clocks to break the silence. Despite his wealth, Mr. Jameson found himself alone, his days passing in quiet solitude. His two adult children, Olivia and Mark, had long ago drifted into their own lives. Olivia, his eldest, was a well-known attorney who lived in a neighboring state. Mark, the youngest, was a high-powered executive constantly traveling for business. Both siblings had achieved great success, embodying the ambition and drive their father had instilled in them. But with success had come distance, and as the years wore on, they became like faint memories in Mr. Jameson's life, present only in family photographs and rare, polite phone calls on holidays. Over time, Mr. Jameson grew accustomed to his solitude, though he still harbored the faintest hope that one day he would see his children as more than mere visitors interested in his estate. Olivia and Mark, while dutiful in their occasional visits, showed little interest in his well-being. Their conversations revolved around inheritance, the estate's upkeep, and the complex finances of their father's empire. Both of them assumed, perhaps unconsciously, that their father's wealth would one day be divided between them. It was a silent understanding, one they never discussed directly with Mr. Jameson, but it was there, in the unspoken words that lingered between them. In his final years, Mr. Jameson felt the absence of his family deeply, the empty spaces in his mansion echoing the quiet loneliness of his life. But where his children's affection faded, a new and unexpected source of companionship emerged. Lily, a young girl who lived next door, began appearing at his front door with a simple smile and a warm meal in hand. At just 17, Lily was full of energy and compassion. She had taken an immediate liking to Mr. Jameson, who often sat by his garden or his porch, and she couldn't help but feel drawn to the lonely, quiet man who lived alone in the grand house. Lily's home life was simple. She lived with her mother in a modest house next door. She was a bright, inquisitive young woman with a passion for literature and a natural talent for bringing warmth to those around her. She sensed the isolation that lingered around Mr. Jameson, and her visits gradually became part of her routine. She would bring him homemade soup on chilly days, help him tidy up his garden, or simply sit with him, listening as he shared stories from his youth. The bond that developed between them was unexpected, especially for Mr. Jameson, who had long felt that his wealth had turned people away from him or made him a figure of intimidation. But Lily's affection was pure, untainted by thoughts of money or social status. Her kindness came from a place of genuine care, and slowly she filled the empty space his children had left behind. Through her, Mr. Jameson rediscovered the simple joys of companionship, the laughter that comes from recounting old tales, and the comfort of shared silence. In her presence, Mr. Jameson felt a peace that he hadn't felt in years. Lily became a constant in his life, someone he looked forward to seeing. As his health began to decline, her visits became more frequent, and he found himself depending on her kindness more than he had ever relied on anyone. She would bring him books from the library, share her dreams of going to college, and listen patiently as he talked about his regrets, his wishes, and his lingering hopes. Mr. Jameson's fondness for Lily grew with each visit, and he began to see her as more than just a neighbor. She became family. In her, he found the comfort and loyalty he had always longed for from his own children. While Olivia and Mark remained absent, preoccupied with their busy lives and careers, Lily's selfless gestures made a lasting impression on Mr. Jameson, filling him with a sense of belonging and understanding. As his health continued to wane, Mr. Jameson often wondered about his legacy, what he would leave behind, and who would truly carry forward the values he cherished. In those moments, he thought of Lily, her laughter and her kindness, and he felt a profound sense of peace. She had brought warmth into his life in ways he hadn't anticipated, and though he knew his time was limited, he felt comforted knowing that he had experienced true compassion, even if it hadn't come from his own blood. The scene closes with Mr. Jameson sitting by his window, watching the sunset with a quiet smile, his heart contented by Lily's kindness. Little did he know that in the days to come, his passing would reveal a secret that would change everything for those he left behind. As the days grew colder and quieter in Mr. Jameson's grand home, life finally slipped away from the 82-year-old man, leaving an emptiness that echoed through his empty rooms. News of his passing traveled swiftly to his two children, Olivia and Mark, who lived far from their father's estate. When they received the call, neither sibling expressed much sorrow or surprise. Instead, both of them saw the situation in terms of practical matters, the arrangements, the estate, and, most importantly, the division of assets. Within a day, both Olivia and Mark were on flights back to the city, thinking of the wealth and properties that awaited them more than the life they had lost. Mr. Jameson's legacy, carefully built over a lifetime, was something they had each taken for granted. They assumed that, with his passing, it was finally time to claim what they considered rightfully theirs. When Olivia and Mark arrived at the house, they were met by Lily, the young neighbor girl who had been Mr. Jameson's steady companion during his final days. She greeted them at the door, her expression filled with a quiet sadness as she informed them about the small funeral she had arranged on his behalf. Olivia's and Mark's faces betrayed a brief flash of surprise. Who was this young woman, and how much of their father's life had she witnessed that they hadn't? "Thank you for arranging everything," Olivia said coolly, sizing up the young girl standing in her father's home. "We appreciate it. We'll handle things from here." Lily nodded, attempting to keep her composure. She had cared deeply for Mr. Jameson, but she was painfully aware that, to his children, she was only a neighbor, nothing more. As she gathered her things to leave, Mark's voice broke the silence. "How did you know our father, exactly?" There was a faint edge of suspicion in his voice, but Lily answered calmly. "Mr. Jameson and I became friends over the last year. I'd bring him meals and keep him company. He was a good man." Mark raised an eyebrow at this, exchanging a quick glance with Olivia. Neither of them had known the details of their father's daily life for years, and the idea that this young girl knew more about him than they did seemed to unsettle them. But rather than ask further questions, they quickly turned back to their true concern. As Lily prepared to step out, Olivia's eyes scanned the grand living room with a mixture of pride and anticipation. She noticed every detail, the polished wood, the fine art adorning the walls, the handcrafted furniture that reflected her father's refined taste. The house, filled with treasures from all over the world, was just a part of the fortune she believed would soon be hers, and her brother's. Shortly after Lily left, the family's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, arrived. His somber expression and dark suit added a finality to the occasion, and as he sat down in the parlor, Olivia and Mark exchanged a glance of readiness. In the solemn quiet of Mr. Jameson's study, where the thick oak walls seemed to absorb every breath, Mr. Henderson sat across from Olivia and Mark. The lawyer's demeanor was serious, his voice steady as he unfolded the first page of Mr. Jameson's will. Olivia and Mark leaned forward, their faces displaying an unusual mix of impatience and apprehension. Both had expected this moment for years, yet as they sat in their father's old, familiar space, an unspoken tension lingered in the room. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, his voice filling the room. "I, Arthur Jameson, Being of sound mind, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." He paused, glancing over at Olivia and Mark, whose expressions ranged from mild boredom to eager anticipation. "As you both know," he continued, "your father was a man of great accomplishment, and his estate reflects the fruits of his life's work." He paused again, noting the siblings' impatient nods. "But he was also a man who, in his last years, faced solitude and reflection, a time that reshaped his values and, consequently, his wishes for the inheritance." Mr. Henderson's voice became softer as he read the next portion of the will. "To my beloved children, Olivia and Mark, whom I raised with hope and expectations, I leave a portion of my wealth that reflects my desire to support their lives. Each will receive a monetary bequest to assist them in their continued paths." Olivia and Mark exchanged a quick glance, a shadow of confusion passing over their faces. There was something unusual about the tone of this section, as if their father had more to say, a hesitation in the words that seemed uncharacteristic. Mr. Henderson turned to the next section and, with a deep breath, continued. "However, the majority of my estate, including the family home, and my most significant assets, I leave to the one who showed me kindness and compassion during my most vulnerable days, my young neighbor, Lily Harper." The words hung in the air, a deafening silence filling the room as Olivia and Mark processed the revelation. For a few moments, they seemed frozen, the meaning of Mr. Henderson's words taking time to settle in. "What?" Olivia's voice broke the silence, disbelief etched in every syllable. You're saying that he left the house, our family home, to her?" She shot a glance at Lily, who was seated quietly nearby, her head slightly lowered, clearly uncomfortable under the weight of their stares. Mark's face flushed with anger, and he leaned forward, his voice barely controlled. "This has to be some kind of mistake," he argued, his voice taut with frustration. "Why would he leave our home to a girl he barely knew?" Mr. Henderson remained calm, looking from one sibling to the other. "Your father was very clear in his intentions," he said. "Lily was there for him in ways that meant a great deal to him. She showed him genuine care, not because of who he was or what he owned, but because she simply wanted to make his final years less lonely." Olivia's voice grew sharper, her disbelief quickly turning to bitterness. "This is absurd. She was a neighbor, a stranger. She can't possibly deserve his estate more than his own children." At this, Lily lifted her gaze, a mix of shock and hurt on her face. Though she had come to care for Mr. Jameson, she had never expected anything in return. Seeing the anger in Olivia and Mark's eyes, she felt as though her simple gestures of kindness had somehow transformed into a source of betrayal. I didn't know he would do this," Lily said quietly, her voice breaking the tension in the room. "I just tried to be there for him because he seemed so lonely. I never expected anything in return. I only wanted to help him, that's all." Mark scoffed, his face contorted with a mixture of resentment and disbelief. "You expect us to believe that?" he sneered. "You just happened to care for a wealthy, lonely old man out of the kindness of your heart?" Olivia joined in, her tone colder. "It sounds like manipulation to me," she said, crossing her arms. "Our father may have been lonely, but that doesn't mean he didn't fall victim to someone taking advantage of his vulnerability." Lily sat there, stunned, her eyes cast down as their words washed over her. She wanted to defend herself, to tell them about the afternoons she'd spent bringing him soup, the stories he'd told her about his life, and the way his face would light up every time she visited. But she could see in their hardened faces that any explanation would fall on deaf ears. She took a steady breath, her voice quiet but firm, as she replied, "I did what I felt was right. I don't regret any of it." Seeing Lily's genuine reaction, Mr. Henderson took a moment to calm the siblings, before addressing the deeper sentiments in Mr. Jameson's will. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out several letters. "Your father wrote these letters, explaining his feelings and motivations behind his decision," he said, placing the stack gently in front of Olivia and Mark. The siblings hesitated before picking them up, opening the first letter with a mix of curiosity and indignation. The handwriting was unmistakably their father's, neat yet slightly shaky, as if each word had been chosen with care. "To my children," the letter began, "there are some truths I came to understand only in my later years. As I grew older, I realized how much I longed for connection, for the simple presence of family around me. In my isolation, I found myself drifting further from you, not because of anger or resentment, but because time and distance had separated us." Olivia's hand trembled slightly as she read, the lines feeling both personal and impersonal, a painful reminder of the space they had allowed to grow between themselves and their father. The letter continued. "In those last years, Lily became a source of comfort. She was young, yes, but she filled my days with conversation, laughter, and the kind of warmth I had missed for so long. I chose to leave her the home and part of my estate, not to diminish your importance, but to honor the compassion she showed me, a gift I came to cherish more than any material possession." As they read further, they came across memories he had written about his last days with Lily. Small details filled the pages, the times she had brought him tea on chilly evenings, the way she had listened intently to his stories, and how she had never once asked for anything in return. He described moments of genuine connection, how her simple gestures had restored his faith in humanity. "Lily," Mr. Jameson had written, "reminded me that love doesn't come from wealth or blood, but from a place of kindness and empathy. She taught me that even a small act of kindness can breathe life into a tired heart." Mark's face was pale, and Olivia's eyes grew glossy as they took in the words, their anger slowly dissipating, replaced by an uncomfortable sense of self-reflection. For so long they had thought of their father's wealth as their legacy, their entitlement. Now, they were beginning to see that their father had yearned for something more than material inheritance. Mr. Henderson spoke again, his tone gentle but firm. "Your father's intention was not to cause pain, but to offer a final lesson on what truly mattered to him in the end. He wanted to show you the value of compassion and that true wealth is found in love and human connection." Unable to refute the sincerity of the letters, Olivia and Mark found themselves overwhelmed with a mixture of shame and regret. They had spent so much time chasing their own ambitions, building their own lives, that they had forgotten to look back at the man who had given them the foundation to succeed. Lily, still seated quietly across from them, could see the shift in their expressions. Despite their earlier accusations, she felt no resentment. In that moment, all she hoped for was that Mr. Jameson's final wish would bring them closer, just as he had intended. The reading of the will ended with silence filling the room once more, each person left with a different understanding of the legacy Mr. Jameson had left behind, and the true worth of the wealth he had shared so selflessly in his final days. As Olivia and Mark left Mr. Jameson's study and retreated to separate corners of the grand but empty house, a heavy silence settled around them. The shock of the will's reading had hit them hard, but now, as the initial anger subsided, a far more unsettling feeling began to creep in. Regret. Olivia found herself wandering through the halls, her eyes drifting over family portraits hanging on the walls, moments of laughter, vacations, and celebrations long past. She paused in front of a photo of herself and her father from her high school graduation. She couldn't remember the last time she'd even looked at it. That day, she realized, had been one of the last when she'd truly seen her father, as more than just a figure in the background of her busy life. Meanwhile, Mark sat in their father's study, his hands nervously tapping the polished desk. The room was untouched, frozen in time, as a testament to Mr. Jameson's routines, the leather-bound journals on the shelf, the reading glasses lying next to his favorite chair. Mark remembered the quiet evenings when his father used to sit there, often inviting him to talk about his life and career. But back then, Mark had always brushed off these conversations, convinced that his father couldn't possibly understand the pressures of his world. The deeper they drifted into their memories, the more Olivia and Mark began to piece together the unspoken message in their father's final act. He hadn't left them out of his will to punish them. He'd done it to teach them a lesson he couldn't seem to express in words alone. Later that night, Olivia and Mark found themselves in the kitchen, both drawn to the comfort of the familiar space. For once, the air between them was free from competition or old sibling rivalries. They shared a somber silence, each knowing the other was processing similar feelings. "It's strange, isn't it?" Olivia finally spoke, her voice quiet. "I feel like I don't even know who he really was, like I was too busy to notice what he needed from us." Mark nodded, running a hand through his hair. I think I convinced myself that he'd be okay on his own, that he was stronger than he really was. Maybe I just didn't want to deal with what it meant if he wasn't." A faint, sad smile crossed Olivia's lips as she recalled how she'd so often tried to dodge his calls, citing work obligations and late meetings. "I always thought there'd be more time, that I'd have a chance to make it up to him somehow." Mark's voice cracked slightly as he replied, Me too. I used to think he was just being dramatic when he'd ask if I'd come over on Sundays. I didn't realize how much it probably meant to him, just to have us there." Their reflections took them back to memories they'd long buried. Family dinners, road trips, and the simple moments of warmth that had filled their home in childhood. As they remembered their father's laugh, the way he'd always insisted on asking about their days, they realized just how much they had missed in recent years. They'd lost the thread that had once bound them together, and in its place, they'd allowed the ambitions of their own lives to build walls between them and their father. Levi stood up from his desk and walked over to the window to look out into the parking lot, letting the sun's brightness inflate the curtains of the night so he could see her better. After a long pause, Olivia sighed, her voice heavy with remorse. "And now there's Lily," she said, her tone softened by a grudging admiration. "She did for him what we should have done. She gave him the care and time that he probably wanted from us." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. I was angry at first, thinking she'd just taken advantage of him, but after reading those letters, it's clear she brought him genuine happiness. She didn't expect anything from him. She just cared." They both remembered the gentle, unassuming girl who had taken the time to bring Mr. Jameson small tokens of comfort, meals, books, and laughter. Lily had filled their father's life with the small kindnesses that he had missed from his own children. She hadn't been there to gain anything. She had simply seen a lonely old man and, out of the goodness of her heart, had chosen to help. With a deep breath, Olivia looked at her brother. "Do you think he was trying to tell us something?" she asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the question. Mark's gaze was distant as he replied, "I think he wanted us to see that love isn't about obligations or inheritance. Maybe he wanted us to understand that real wealth is in how we connect with each other, not in what we expect to receive." The realization settled between them, both comforting and haunting. They'd spent so long treating their father's life as a footnote to their own, a source of future security rather than an irreplaceable bond. The following morning, Olivia and Mark decided to visit Lily, hoping to understand her perspective. They found her tending to the small garden in front of her modest home, her hands delicately planting seeds in the soil. She looked up at their approach, her face a mix of surprise and slight apprehension. "Olivia? Mark? I didn't expect to see you." She greeted them cautiously. They both took a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak from their hearts. Olivia stepped forward, offering a small, genuine smile. "Lily, we owe you an apology. I'm sorry for how we reacted yesterday. It wasn't fair to you." Mark nodded, adding, "We were overwhelmed, and we didn't handle it well. But after reading our father's letters and thinking about everything, we realized that you were there for him in a way we weren't. And we're grateful that he had you in his life." Lily's eyes softened and she looked away, clearly moved. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice filled with sincerity. "Mr. Jameson was a kind man. I just did what felt right." The siblings spent the rest of the morning with her, asking about her memories of their father, listening as she recounted stories of his humor, his generosity, and his moments of quiet reflection. They realized that Lily's perspective filled in gaps they hadn't even known existed, showing them a side of their father they'd never truly appreciated. Through Lily's stories, Olivia and Mark saw their father as a whole person for the first time, a man who had given everything for his family, but had never felt truly seen or valued in return. This newfound understanding brought them an unexpected sense of peace. When they finally said goodbye to Lily, both Olivia and Mark felt as though a weight had been lifted. They knew they couldn't change the past, but they could honor their father's memory by learning from their mistakes. In the days that followed, Olivia and Mark dedicated themselves to preserving their father's legacy in a meaningful way. They set up a foundation in his name to support causes he cared about, including a scholarship fund for young people like Lily, those who were kind-hearted and selfless, just as he had described her. Each act of kindness, each new connection they forged, felt like a tribute to their father, a way of finally showing him the respect and love he had always deserved. In the quiet moments, Olivia would think back to that last letter, to the words that had stirred something so profound within her. She knew now that the true inheritance their father had left them was not the wealth or the estate, but the lesson he'd imparted through his life and Lily's role in it. That the greatest wealth they could ever hold was the love they gave freely and the connections they chose to cherish. And so, as they moved forward, Olivia and Mark carried their father's memory with them, letting his wisdom guide them. His final gift had not been what they'd expected, but it had become precisely what they needed. Through Lily, they'd rediscovered what it meant to be family, and through their father's legacy, they'd found a new way to live, a life centered not on gain, but on giving. As Olivia and Mark sat together, holding Mr. Jameson's letter, a sense of calm and acceptance settled over them. The initial shock and resentment they had felt over his will had faded, replaced by a profound understanding of the lesson he intended to impart. They had come to realize that their father's legacy wasn't about wealth. It was about love, loyalty, and the courage to mend broken connections. In the days that followed, they spoke at length about how to honor his memory in a way that would truly reflect the life he had led. For the first time in years, Olivia and Mark shared honest conversations, letting down the walls they had built between them. They began to see each other not as rivals, but as siblings, bonded by shared memories and a renewed desire to honor their father's spirit. Meanwhile, Lily was still processing the incredible change in her life. In her heart, she felt torn. Part of her worried that using Mr. Jameson's inheritance was like claiming a reward for something she had done purely out of kindness. But as she sifted through her memories of him, the quiet afternoons spent listening to his stories, the warmth in his voice when he spoke of the importance of family, she understood that her actions had meant more to him than she had ever realized. One evening, Olivia and Mark invited Lily to join them for coffee. There they shared their plans to create something meaningful in Mr. Jameson's name. As they discussed his love for supporting community causes, an idea began to form among them. What if they could create a foundation in his memory, one that would help those who were elderly and isolated, just as he had been in his later years? They looked to Lily, the one who had truly been there for their father, to help guide this endeavor. "I want to do this," Lily said with conviction, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'll use what he left me to start a foundation, and it'll be in his name. We'll work together to help others, to make sure no one ever feels the way he did, alone and forgotten." The three of them set to work, pooling their resources and ideas to form the Jameson Foundation for Senior Connection, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting the elderly who live alone and may feel isolated. They organized regular events, created support networks, and provided essential resources, always guided by the principles of compassion and care that Mr. Jameson had so quietly cherished. Months later, on what would have been Mr. Jameson's birthday, Olivia, Mark, and Lily gathered in the courtyard of a senior center, where they had set up a small garden in his memory. Friends, neighbors, and the elderly residents gathered, some holding candles, others holding flowers, all there to honor the man who had, in one way or another, impacted their lives. As they stood together, Olivia took a deep breath and spoke to the crowd. "Our father taught us a lesson we were too blind to see at first. He showed us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the love we give, the lives we touch, and the moments we share. Today, we honor his memory by continuing his legacy of kindness." Lily then added, her voice filled with the same quiet strength she had shown Mr. Jameson in his final days. "He taught me that family isn't just who we're born with, but who we choose to care for. Because of him, I'll carry that lesson in my heart always." In that moment, under the glow of the candles and the warmth of the community, they felt a presence, as though Mr. Jameson was there with them, smiling gently, his heart full of peace. As they left the ceremony, each one felt a new purpose within them. Olivia and Mark had repaired not only their relationship with each other, but also with the memory of their father. They found joy in dedicating their time to the foundation, using it as a way to atone for the missed years and to build a future that truly honored him. And Lily, the young woman who had simply followed her heart, found herself at the helm of a cause greater than she had ever imagined. She led the foundation with humility and grace, a fitting tribute to the man who had taught her the true value of kindness. Steve Jobs, who was also Lily's father, praised the foundation as, through this unexpected journey, they learned that love, no matter how it is expressed, leaves a lasting impact. Mr. Jameson's legacy lived on, not just in his wealth, but in the lives of those he touched, and through the lessons he left for his children and for Lily, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, forgiveness, and family. Thank you for joining us for this heartfelt story. Mr. Jameson's legacy reminds us all of the priceless gift of family, love, and the impact of small acts of kindness. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. How has an act of kindness touched your life? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more moving stories that bring powerful lessons to light. Together, let's keep spreading compassion, one story at a time.